I was sitting on the couch, half distracted, scrolling through my phone when her iPad, synced to the same account, lit up on the coffee table. A message popped up, casual, shameless. "Don't worry, babe. He doesn't care. He pays my bills, so it's not even cheating." My chest tightened. For a second, I thought I misread it. I blinked, reread it, and the words stabbed deeper the second time. My hands went cold, my stomach turned. That was my wife, talking about me as if I were some clueless ATM, some background character in her life. I felt my throat burn, but no sound came out. Rage, humiliation, disbelief, all crashing at once. And then, silence. That moment where your heart slows, where your pain sharpens into something dangerous. Because in that second I knew, she thought she was untouchable. She thought I'd stay quiet, accept the scraps, and look away. But she had no idea who she was really dealing with. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever been made to feel like you weren't enough, then you know the fire I felt in that moment. And if you've ever dreamed of serving justice to someone who wronged you, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready. Because this isn't just a story of betrayal. This is the story of how I exposed everything she thought she could hide, and made her regret ever underestimating me. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever been made to feel like you weren't enough, smash that like button right now. Because trust me, what you're about to hear is not just another story. It's raw. It's painful, and it turns into one of the most jaw-dropping revenges you'll ever come across. Make sure you subscribe and stick with me until the very end, because the way this all unfolds, the way I turned her own, arrogance against her, it's the kind of ending you don't want to miss. I've always believed that love wasn't just about words. It was about sacrifice, about showing up day after day even when it wasn't easy. That's how I built my marriage. I wasn't born into money. Everything I have, I earned with late nights, endless hours, and a stubborn refusal to quit. By the time I was in my early 30s, I had carved out a stable career, a decent home, and enough savings to give us the kind of life I never had growing up. My wife, she was the woman I thought I was building it all for. From the outside, we looked like the perfect couple. I worked hard, and she enjoyed the comforts that came with it. Vacations, a new car, shopping trips whenever she felt like it. I didn't mind. It made me proud to provide. That's what a husband does, right? He carries the weight so his partner doesn't have to. At first, her gratitude seemed genuine. She would smile when I handed her the keys to a car she had been eyeing for months. She'd kiss me after dinner and whisper about how lucky she felt. But as time went on, those moments became fewer, shorter, and less sincere. Her thank yous turned into expectations. Her smiles became smirks. It wasn't long before I realized I wasn't her hero. I was her wallet. I brushed it off at first. Every relationship has its rough patches. I told myself she was stressed, that maybe she just needed more attention. So I doubled down on trying to make her happy. Surprise gifts, weekend getaways, a bigger allowance. But the more I gave, the less she respected me. It was like pouring water into a bucket with no bottom. No matter how much I sacrificed, it was never enough. The cracks began to show in subtle ways. She'd roll her eyes when I talked about work, as if my long hours were an inconvenience to her. She'd complain that I was never around, even though the only reason I wasn't was because I was out earning the money that funded her lifestyle. Then came the late nights. First, it was girls' night, then just grabbing a drink after the gym. At first, I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. I wanted to trust her. But trust feels a lot like denial when the pieces don't add up. Her phone became glued to her hand. If I so much as glanced in its direction, she'd snap at me. "What, don't you trust me?" she'd say, her tone sharp, her eyes daring me to push further. She started dressing differently, too. Tighter clothes, more revealing, a kind of effort she hadn't put into our marriage in years. But not for me. I could tell. Then came the expenses. Little things at first. Odd charges on the credit card, expensive dinners when she swore she was just out with friends. I'd ask about them and she'd wave me off with some flimsy excuse. "Don't worry about it. I've got it handled." Handled with whose money? Mine. Always mine. I wanted to believe I was imagining it, that these were just the growing pains of marriage. But deep down, my gut knew better. Something wasn't right. And as much as I tried to bury that feeling, it kept crawling back to the surface. Looking back, the signs were all there. I just didn't want to see them, because once you admit to yourself that the person you love, the person you sacrifice everything for, might not be loyal, your whole world starts to unravel. And mine was about to come crashing down. The truth didn't come crashing down all at once. It leaked in, like water through a cracked ceiling, slow, steady, impossible to ignore. One night, I came home earlier than usual. A meeting had been canceled, and I thought I'd surprise her with dinner. The house was quiet, too quiet. Her car was in the driveway, but she wasn't in the living room, not in the kitchen. Upstairs, the shower was running, her phone buzzing faintly on the nightstand. I told myself not to look. I told myself trust mattered. But then it lit up, and the name on the screen wasn't one of her friends. Curiosity, fear, anger, they all tangled together as I reached for it. My hand was trembling before I even unlocked the phone. And then I saw it. Texts, dozens of them. Him telling her she looked too beautiful to be stuck with some boring provider. Her replying with laughing emojis, with pictures I had never seen her send to me. Words that burned into my chest. Don't worry, he doesn't care. He pays my bills, so it's not cheating. I remember the way my stomach dropped, like I'd stepped off a cliff with no ground beneath me. My palms were sweaty, slippery, like I couldn't hold on to the phone. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might pass out. Every line I read made my world smaller, darker, colder. She came out of the shower humming, wrapped in a towel, her hair dripping, her face casual, like nothing was wrong. When she saw me holding her phone, the humming stopped. But instead of guilt, instead of panic, she tilted her head and smirked. So you finally snooped, huh? My voice cracked when I asked, how long? She didn't even hesitate. Does it matter? It's not cheating if he pays my bills. You take care of me, he takes care of me. Different ways. She said it like it was math, like it was logical, like I should understand. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My throat went dry, my lips trembling. You're my wife, I whispered. She rolled her eyes. And? You're acting like I slept with your brother or something. Grow up. Men like you are supposed to provide. Men like him? They're supposed to spoil. It's a win-win. I don't see the problem. Her tone was like acid, eating through whatever hope I had left. There was no remorse, no shame. Just cold calculation. She twisted her towel tighter and added, You're lucky, you know. Most women wouldn't tell their husbands. I'm being honest with you. That should count for something. Honest? That word rattled in my head until it warped into something bitter. My heart pounded so loud it echoed in my ears. I had been loyal, dedicated, sacrificing every ounce of myself to give her a better life. And she stood there, dripping water on the carpet, telling me I should be grateful she was honest about betraying me. That's when I saw her for who she really was. Not the woman I married, not my partner. She was a parasite, entitled, manipulative, materialistic to her core. She didn't love me. She loved the lifestyle I created. She didn't respect me. She respected what my paycheck could buy. That night, something inside me broke. Or maybe it didn't break. Maybe it hardened. Because I realized she wasn't going to change. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even hiding it. And if she thought I was going to keep playing the fool, paying her bills while she lived a double life, she had another thing coming. The days after that discovery were the darkest I've ever lived. Nights blurred into mornings, and mornings into endless, hollow afternoons. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her smirk, heard her dismissive voice. It's not cheating if he pays my bills. The words echoed like a curse. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, my heart racing as if I were running a marathon in my chest. My mind kept replaying everything. Every late night she brushed me off, every time she asked for money with that entitled tone, every excuse I let slide because I wanted to believe her. I felt like an idiot, humiliated, betrayed in the deepest way a man can be betrayed, not just cheated on, but reduced to nothing more than a walking credit card. Anger boiled in me, raw and uncontrollable. My hands shook whenever I thought of her laughing with him. My jaw locked so tight it hurt. There were moments when I thought about confronting her, screaming, demanding answers. But I knew it wouldn't matter. She'd just shrug, roll her eyes, maybe even twist it back on me. She had no shame. My friends started to notice the change in me. One night, I sat with an old buddy over beers, and he finally asked, "What's wrong, man? You've lost weight. You look like hell." I hesitated, but then it all came pouring out. He slammed his glass on the table. "I told you she was no good. You've been killing yourself to give her everything, and she's been laughing at you behind your back. You need to cut her off before she drags you down even further." Another time, my sister called me after noticing my short texts and dead voice on the phone. "You don't sound like yourself," she said gently. "Whatever's going on, don't let anyone make you feel small. You deserve better." Their words should have been comforting, but instead they made the humiliation sting sharper. Because they were right. Everyone could see it but me. I had been blind, and now I was paying the price. For a while, I sank into that pit of self-pity. Long nights, too much whiskey, staring at the glow of my computer screen without even seeing what was in front of me. But somewhere in that fog, something inside me shifted. I realized that as long as I stayed broken, she won. Every sleepless night, every ounce of shame, it was fuel for her arrogance. She thought she had me trapped, powerless, too dependent on the fantasy of our marriage to walk away. And that thought lit a spark. What if I stopped reacting emotionally? What if I stopped playing the fool she thought I was? I couldn't erase the betrayal, but I could control how the story ended. She wanted me silent, compliant, blind. But what if I gave her the opposite? What if I gave her the one thing she never saw coming? Exposure. The more I sat with that idea, the more it grew. I stopped thinking about revenge as some angry outburst and started seeing it as a plan. A slow, deliberate dismantling of the life she thought she had secured. I didn't confront her. Not right away. Instead, I played my part. I smiled when she wanted me to smile. I handed over the card when she asked. On the surface, nothing changed. But beneath it, every word she spoke, every receipt I found, every lie she told, I collected it like ammunition. If she thought I was powerless, she was about to learn how dangerous a quiet man can be when he finally decides he's had enough. For weeks, I became a ghost in my own life, present enough to be believable, invisible enough that she never suspected I was watching. Mornings I went to work as if nothing had changed. Evenings I sat in the den with a book, pretending to read while my brain cataloged her every move. I learned how to hide in plain sight, how to be the husband who paid and smiled while quietly collecting the proof that would ruin her. I started small and methodical. I copied her texts, screenshot by screenshot, letting the screen light up my face at 2 in the morning as I scrolled through the barrage of messages, flirty lines, late-night meetups, pictures that belonged in someone else's private gallery. I photographed receipts she left in the glove compartment, logged dates and locations of dinners that didn't match her girls' nights, and pulled statements from credit cards that showed a pattern. Luxury purchases, hotel charges, transports billed to places she never told me about. Each entry was a small, sharp blade. Together, they would cut through her lies. I learned the language of evidence. Metadata from photos, timestamps on messages, matching locations on payment records. If she was going to lie about who paid for what, I would have numbers that told the true story. I set up folders on my laptop, labeled, dated, backed up to an external drive I hid at a friend's house. The neatness of it felt strangely comforting. Chaos had reigned in my chest. Order in a spreadsheet steadied me. While I was cataloging, I made moves to protect myself. I stopped using the joint credit cards without making it look like the routine continued. I quietly shifted funds into a separate account she didn't know about, enough to cover legal fees and a clean exit if it came to that. I met with a lawyer once, then twice, under the pretense of needing advice for a business contract. The lawyer's office smelled of coffee and leather chairs. The receptionist assumed I was there for work. The man I spoke with listened without blinking, asked the blunt questions I was too proud to voice. "Do you have proof? Do you want custody? Are you prepared to move quickly?" I nodded. He taught me the paperwork, the timing, the leverage. Knowledge felt like armor. I also played the emotional chess piece of normalcy. I kept the dates, the presents, the occasional tender moment she didn't expect. That was the cruelest part. Smiling at dinner while my throat burned, sitting through her stories about vacations I paid for, making small talk about things that now felt poisonous. but every smile was calculated. Every polite nod bought me time to line up the dominoes. Timing became everything. I couldn't act when I was furious. Furious sloppy. I needed a moment that would amplify the humiliation, a stage big enough that she couldn't spin it into sympathy. I waited for the right crowd. Family gatherings, a business dinner where her friends would be present, the holidays when appearances mattered most. I wanted witnesses who could attest to the callousness I had lived with in secret. Anticipation was a slow burn. There were nights when the waiting felt worse than the discovery. I'd stare at the folders on my screen and imagine the look on her face when the truth landed like a punch. I rehearsed what I'd say, what I'd hand over, printed copies, labeled envelopes, a slideshow if needed. I pictured her voice falter. I pictured her smirk crumble, but I didn't rush. I let the plan marinate until every step was impossible to derail. I double-checked backups. I rehearsed contingencies. I told myself patience wasn't weakness. It was preparation. The more quietly I worked, the louder the eventual exposure would be. On my best days, I felt like a surgeon, precise, hidden behind the curtain, methodically cutting away the infection. On my worst, I felt like a storm building, coiled and dangerous. Either way, I had made a choice. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to beg for respect or apologies. I would expose her with evidence so undeniable that even her most loyal defenders would have to see the truth. Now, with the folders closed and the backup drives hidden, I waited. The strike had to be perfect. The stage had to be set. And somewhere inside me, the quiet, controlled version of the man I used to be was sharpening himself for the moment he would finally pull the curtain back. I picked the night carefully, my sister's birthday dinner at our house. A room full of people who knew us both. Parents, close friends, a couple of co-workers. It wasn't cruel. It was strategic. She thrived on performing, on the little displays of wealth and social ease she'd cultivated since I'd started paying for everything. I knew that stage better than anyone. We ate, laughed, the house warm with chatter and clinking cutlery. She was radiant, the kind of radiant that comes from being fed a life you didn't earn. I kept my face neutral, poured wine for guests, made small jokes. Inside, the plan ticked like a clock. The slideshow I'd prepared sat on a flash drive in my pocket. Screenshots, receipts, timestamps, bank statements, pictures. Evidence. Cold, clean, irrefutable. When the cake came out and everyone sang, I stood up. There was that small pause you get at the center of attention. I cleared my throat, said something quick about celebrating family, then clicked the remote. The big screen lit up with a message thread. Her messages, his messages, the same words that had dug into me months before. The room went quiet. People glanced at one another, then back at the screen. I watched her face. At first there was confusion, then irritation, the practiced mask. "What are you doing?" she hissed, low enough for only me to hear. I didn't hiss back. I spoke slowly, measured, the voice of someone who'd rehearsed the cadence so there would be no room for fluster. "You told me it wasn't cheating," I said, and the screenshots scrolled. Late-night selfies, hotel addresses, charges for dinners in cities she never mentioned visiting with me. I brought up the credit card statements with travel and gifts billed to places she'd claimed were girls' trips. I displayed the photos from his phone that matched timestamps on the receipts. For each thing she tried to spin, another file answered. She tried to laugh it off, a sharp, brittle sound that landed like glass. "This is private," she said, voice high. "You can't just—" "Yes, I can," I cut in. "Because you told him he pays my bills, so it's not cheating. You told me you were honest. Honesty isn't an excuse for betrayal. It's not a shield." People exchanged looks. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. A friend of hers scoffed and searched her phone. Another guest set their jaw. You could feel the room rebalancing itself around the new truth. I watched her eyes flick from screen to the faces around her, and finally to me. For the first time since that shower, her certainty faltered. Panic fluttered there, then sharpened into anger. She started to speak fast, trying to gaslight, to pin blame on me. "You never listen? You're controlling. You're making this up." But each accusation sounded thinner than the last. Facts don't care about narratives. I handed printed copies to family members, Bank statements, the travel receipts, the timestamps. The evidence fit together like a trap. Her protestations became background noise. When the humiliation hit, it wasn't loud. It was in the way the color drained from her face, the way her shoulders dropped. A posture that erased years of performative confidence. Her friends backed away as if burned. Someone whispered, "I can't believe she—" My sister's husband stood up, eyes cold. "You lied to all of us," he said. Her replies became small, defensive, animal-like. You could see the instinct to salvage status, to deflect, to cry, to dramatize, but the audience had already decided. Calmly, I laid out the other step I'd taken. I've secured our finances. I've moved funds, I've talked to a lawyer. I'm filing for separation. You'll have what's fair, but not one more cent of indulgence paid for by me while you live a double life. I watched the panic sharpen into real fear. The things she traded for, comfort, lifestyle, attention, began to slip through her fingers right there in front of everyone. The look on her face was a mix of disbelief and genuine terror as she calculated the loss. She tried to bargain, to sob a little, to promise anything for one more night of normalcy. But the quiet in my chest had shifted from a knot to a steady weight of resolve. I felt tears sting behind my eyes, not from rage, but something like release. It wasn't vindictive joy. It was the relief that comes when a long-held truth is finally out in the open and you stop carrying it alone. The aftermath was immediate and irrevocable. Invitations dried up. Her social currency, cultivated through my spending and her charm, lost its value when the truth surfaced. Overnight, she wasn't the woman people envied. She was the woman people pitied. People who had laughed with her at parties now avoided her gaze. The man she used for money quietly consolidated what he could and disappeared from our mutual circles. She packed a bag within a week and moved into a small rental she could no longer afford without the life we'd shared. I didn't dance on her ruin. I didn't gloat. I collected my documents, closed the slides, and sat back down. The room hummed with whispers and awkward silences. I took a long breath, felt my shoulders unclench in a way they hadn't for months, and in that inhale, something shifted. The man who had been humiliated felt whole again. He had taken back control not by screaming, but by being precise, patient, and unassailable. The payoff wasn't just her fall from comfort. It was reclaiming my dignity, my agency, and finally refusing to fund someone else's betrayal. When I look back now, I don't just see the betrayal. I see the warning signs I ignored, the nights I convinced myself that sacrifice was the same as love, the excuses I accepted because I didn't want to face the truth. Betrayal doesn't happen overnight. It builds brick by brick in every rolled eye, every dismissive laugh, every time you feel smaller in your own home, but choose silence over confrontation. The hardest part wasn't catching her. The hardest part was realizing how long I had lived in a prison I built myself. I wanted to be the provider, the man who carried everything on his back because that's what I thought a good husband did. But when you give until there's nothing left of you, and the person you're giving to treats it as entitlement instead of love, you stop being a partner. You become a servant, and servants don't get respect. That was the turning point for me, understanding that respect is not optional. You can't buy it with vacations. You can't earn it with endless hours at work. You can't beg for it with late-night arguments. Respect is either given freely, or it's never there at all. People ask me if exposing her in front of everyone was cruel. I don't see it that way. It wasn't about revenge for the sake of hurting her. It was about balance, about putting the truth in the light so I could stop carrying it in the dark. She lived shamelessly, dismissing the damage she caused, acting like betrayal was nothing as long as her bills were paid. She didn't deserve my silence. Walking away wasn't easy. Divorce is ugly, even when you're the one who chooses it. But I'll tell you this. Sometimes losing someone who disrespects you is the biggest win of all. The weight I carried, the humiliation that haunted me, it all started to lift the moment I let go. My life is quieter now, simpler, but for the first time in years, it feels like mine. And that's what I want anyone listening to take away. If you're sitting in a relationship where you feel small, where your sacrifices are invisible, where your love is met with entitlement instead of appreciation, Ask yourself what you're really holding on to. Because love without respect is just exploitation. I learned that the hard way. But I also learned that strength isn't measured by how much you endure for someone else. It's measured by how firmly you stand when you finally decide you deserve better. So no, I didn't lose a wife. I lost a burden that was dressed up as love. And I gained something far more valuable, myself. What do you think? Is exposure the only way to deal with betrayal, or is walking away quietly just as powerful? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If this story made you feel something, whether it reminded you of your own scars or gave you a sense of closure you didn't know you needed, smash that like button. It's a simple click, but it helps push stories like this out to people who need to hear them. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Now, I know betrayal isn't just my story. It's something so many people carry in silence. So here's your chance. Drop your own experiences in the comments. Did you ever find yourself blindsided by someone you trusted? Did you ever plot your own revenge, or did you choose the quiet dignity of walking away? Share it, because you never know who you might help by speaking up. This isn't just about gossip or revenge. It's about all of us recognizing our worth and refusing to be treated like we're disposable. And sometimes, hearing someone else's story is the spark that gives another person the courage to finally step out of their own toxic situation. So let's turn the comments into more than just reactions. Let's make it a place where we can vent, where we can laugh at the irony or even cry at the familiar pain. You'll be surprised at how many people have walked the same road. And before you go, here's a little teaser. In the next video, we'll be diving into a story that takes betrayal to a whole new level. A tale of secret double lives, lies stacked on top of lies, and the shocking way it all came crashing down. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. So again, subscribe, drop your thoughts below. Because this channel isn't just about my voice, it's about all of ours. And together, we're going to keep exposing the lies, unpacking the pain, and celebrating the victories that come after betrayal.